Hello and welcome to One Cool Thing, PC Mag's daily show where we show you one cool thing which we are testing out here in the PC Mag Labs. I am Sasha Segan, this is Will Greenwald. If you are watching us live on Facebook, then please ask questions, give comments. Social Pete is here to take your questions and comments. We will talk about anything in the world of technology. It is Friday at the moment, which means that we're feeling a little loose. We're feeling a little loose, we're feeling a little relaxed, we're feeling a little chill. Ask us anything. If you are watching us later on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Consider coming over to Facebook at 10 a.m. Eastern on weekdays when we have the live show. For now, today, we have what is, would we call this our choice in retro gaming systems?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's pretty limited and specific, but it is the best at what it does, not unlike Wolverine. This is the Analogue Super NT. It is a Super Nintendo device. It's not made by Nintendo, but it can play Super Nintendo and Super Famicom cartridges, and its big deal is that it outputs over HDMI to 1080p.
So it sounds like what it does is very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so unlike Wolverine.
The, well, we can see it sort of behind here. You can see the feed on it. A lot of these older systems, they don't output digitally. They just output over composite or using the RF switch adapter, which everyone remembers how to just wrestle with. Maybe S-Video, but that's it. You try to put it on your TV using one of their legacy connectors, it's going to look ugly as hell because it upconverts from like this weird analog signal. Everything looks fuzzy. It's not great. With this, it processes the game and upconverts it using a very good upscaler inside the box. So it looks nice and sharp, even at 1080p. So
it's called a Super Analogue Nt, but maybe you should call it a Super Digital NT.
Sure.
Yeah. So
the company actually is Analogue because, actually I don't know why, because they made before this the Analogue Nt, which is a $500 NES system with a solid aluminum body. So they do niche enthusiast products, but they do very good ones.
So now the major downside here is that I can see two downsides.
Yep.
One, it only plays SNES cartridges.
Yeah. Well, and Super Famicom.
Okay.
But the only difference is two little plastic tabs, so that isn't a big deal.
Right, right. So it's not like one of the retro systems which we've been looking at recently, which has multiple cartridge slots for different kinds of cartridges.
Right. But the good news is that it's it looks a lot better than the other retro systems, like Super Retro Trio Plus we looked at last week. It's good, but the 16-bit games it upconverts, they look way fuzzier than this. This is nice and sharp.
Are we outputting at 1080 right now?
This is 1080p right now.
Okay, okay. And now I'm looking at the controller ports. These are SNES controller ports, but you need to supply your own controller, right?
Yes, that is kind of a weird disadvantage. They don't make the controllers themselves, but they do work with 8BitDo. And offer for an extra $40 on top of this already kind of expensive $190 system. This is the SN30. It's a Bluetooth controller made to look just like the Super Nintendo, and it comes with this dongle, the retro receiver, and it works pretty much flawlessly with no lag. So it lets you play games portably, or wirelessly from your Super Nintendo, and it's pretty good.
Now, what kind of hardware is in here doing the gameplay?
It is the FGPA electronics. This is basically like the hardware of a Super Nintendo in here, and then just a very good upscaler inside that outputs it there. It isn't a system on a chip. It isn't emulating anything. It's just processing the game as if it were Super Nintendo. Okay.
And when we talk about FPGAs, now I know there's some controversy out there about, oh, are FPGAs emulators or not? And I feel like it depends on. It almost depends on your definition of emulator, because an FPGA, can I explain what an FPGA is? Okay. An FPGA is a really cool kind of chip with essentially programmable hardware. So you are programming this chip to act like physically the hardware of an original Super Nintendo. It isn't actually the hardware of a Super Nintendo, but it is programmed to have the same, essentially the same gates and the same electron flows as that hardware would have.
Which is very different from software-based emulation, where you're basically executing code and interpreting the code to work as if it was the hardware, but not with the exact same like electronic process. You're basically emulating what it should be doing, but not what it is. FGPA emulates it on the electronic level.
On the electronic level.
So
exactly.
no, it isn't actually emulation in the sense of gaming emulation because it isn't executing a code like from a software level and just like playing it as if like, hey, this is a virtual game system. No, this is electronically, it's a Super Nintendo.
Okay, okay. So, hey, we've got some questions already.
Are the cords longer than the SNES Classic?
Well, in this case, it's wireless, and it doesn't come with any controllers, so there's that sort of
You supply your own controller. So you can supply a controller with any cord, no cord, anything like that. The power cord, by the way, looks like a standard micro USB.
Yep, it's totally simple. All you have on the back is micro USB and HDMI. There isn't really anything else you can do with it. There's an SD card slot on the side, but that's only for firmware updates. You can't put in cheats, do save files, do any of the emulation tricks you can do with some other systems.
Now, we've talked about this in some of our retro gaming shows before, but I'm going to assume that not everyone watching this watches One Cool Thing every day, although you should. You should watch One Cool Thing every day. Now, I'm looking at this crazy Japanese cartridge here, and I'm thinking, if somebody just wants to start getting back into retro gaming, where do they get these cartridges?
It depends where, like where you live. Online, obviously, you can get a bunch, different sources, eBay, Craigslist, you can see if anyone has collections they're selling. You can find some game shops in New York, there's several good ones, J&R, Video Games New York, even in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, Gotham City Games. But if you live sort of out in the sticks, you might be able to find a lot more in thrift stores and flea markets because those won't be picked apart nearly as much as every thrift store within 100 miles of a major city like here because they know how much this stuff sells, so those shops go for them first. We have another question.
What's your take on Bubsy? Misunderstood classic or underrated gem?
Utter garbage. And I say this, I have Bubsy on Sega Genesis. I tried playing it. It sucks. And the new Bubsy also sucks. Bubsy was never good.
Okay, so
it exists currently only because of irony.
So for people who don't have their own cartridge selections, we do suggest the SNES Classic, right?
Oh yeah, it's great because it has a handful of some of the best games ever made. The Super Metroid, Link to the Past, Final Fantasy 3, 6, Super Mario World, fantastic games. It's emulation based, but it's really good emulation based because Nintendo didn't really skimp on it. If you can find it, it's totally worth it. I recommend it. I have one, and I also have a retro game system because I have a cartridge collection.
Now, is this playing at the exact same speed as an original Super Nintendo and with the same hardware glitches that people use to do cheats and speedruns?
As far as I can tell, yes. A lot of modern, it depends on the context of speedrun. Some people use like tool assisted, which has to be emulated. But on this level, pretty much, yeah. If I were to pull the cartridge out, you would see a glitchy, weird screen that's creepy. I have Star Fox and Wild Tracks, the Japanese version of Stunt Race FX, which uses the Super FX chip, which is super rudimentary 3D graphics. And it renders with the same sort of like slowness and weird janky feel that it did on this original Super Nintendo. This, as far as I've been able to test, is pretty much a spot-on Super Nintendo system.
Now, does Analogue intend to make systems for any of the other classic gaming systems out there?
Well, they've already done the NES with the Analogue Nt and the Mini Nt, which is also like $450, so that's pretty expensive. That is for NES games.
I guess do they intend to make non-ridiculously priced systems?
At $190, this is the most non-ridiculously priced system they've worked on. They are a boutique company, and they do good stuff clearly, but this is for an audience of very specific sorts of collectors who are very into this type of gaming, and they make a good product and focus on that more than something that's super accessible. Retrobit, we've looked at some of their previous ones, the Super Retro Trio last week, and the RES Plus, which is a $40 NES system. Emulation isn't as good as the Analogue Nt. Upconvert's okay because 8-bit games are easier to upconvert over HDMI than like 16-bit because it doesn't get as fuzzy, but it's still not as high quality an experience as you'll get with this hardware.
Let us look, by the way, and I just want to point out the absolute excellence of the screen image here. Now this is this is a 4K panel, by the way.
Well, if you want to see
your 1080p output from this retro gaming system is actually being upscaled by the panel to 4K, right?
Yep. And you can actually see here, this is not an emulation level thing, this is on the upscaler level, but I prefer no scaler because there's nice crisp just pixels. I like the giant pixels, but you can employ smoothers if you want. It's on the up conversion level. The X-ray thing is like a
Turn
weird
off.
thing. It only shows the contours, which is fascinating. You can do a lot with how this outputs. You can decide whether you want to output at 480, 720, or 1080 at 50 or 60 hertz for PAL or NTSC games. Like you can even like adjust scan lines to look a specific way in terms of depth and just all of it. It's very in depth of how I don't even know what advanced mode does, honestly.
And one of the things I was noticing here, and one of the things I was really calling out and really loving, is how pure the colors and the shades are, even on this 4K display. And that was something we weren't seeing with the previous system that we looked at, right?
Yeah, because it's an issue with the upscaler of outputting at a good clip. Like the processing and how you make it look not fuzzy, not weird, not terrible. Bad up conversion can muddy the colors. We even see this in the Wii U Virtual Console for those old games, which if you compare it side by side with the NES Classic and SNES Classic, the Wii U didn't emulate very well. And it's sort of the same thing here. This is good hardware, and it upconverts really nicely.
Yeah, the colors
green looks green.
The colors look amazing, even on the biggest possible, highest resolution possible
It's
display.
excellent.
Yeah, do we have any more questions out there?
Okay.
Okay, so did you give this an editor's choice?
Yep, 4 stars. It is obviously for a very specific sort of gamer, but if you are in that group, this is something you should seriously consider. It's $190. It's pretty expensive for a retro game system. Like my Retro Freak, which is emulation based, was actually around the same price, and I imported it. But this is if you were a purist and you want the best way to play a SNES game, this is the way to do it.
So if you are into the SNES, then get this if you have cartridges. If you don't have any cartridges and you're willing to cut a few corners, the SNES Classic is still amazing.
And even with the SNES Classic, this 8-bit controller, this is Bluetooth. It's designed to work with this receiver, but they have another one, the SN30 2.4G, which comes with a NES/Super Nintendo Classic, like Wiimote, plug in a dongle, so it's wireless and you can use it with your SNES, with your SNES Classic, which is good because those are like 3 and 4 foot cables, but it feels just like the original controller. It's great.
Terrific. So thank you all for watching. The review is up on PCMag.com of the Analogue Super NT. This has been One Cool Thing. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook watching us, Monday is a federal holiday in the United States, so we will not be working then. We will be out celebrating the existence of presidents. That is apparently what we do on that Monday in February.
I'll be playing Monster Hunter.
So he'll be playing Monster Hunter. I will probably be watching Black Panther, and we will see you on Tuesday.